I think everybody knows that not only is Keanu Reeves one of the kindest and most humble people around, but he's a certified badass. But just in case you needed reminding, we thought we'd take a look behind the scenes at one of Keanu's biggest franchises, John Wick, and all the training, stunt work, and anecdotes that go into making the series such a big hit. Let's take a look.
When someone says action, you gotta like it.
One of the things that makes John Wick so special is that instead of the action being played out with quick, frantic cuts, it's done in a slower and a tighter method that immerses the audience into the action. The issue with this is that it makes it harder for the team to cut away to a stunt double during the fight sequences, but the production found a way around this problem. Have Keanu do a majority of the stunts himself. In an interview on the first movie, Keanu stated, quote, "I do all of the action. I'm 90% of what's happening there. I'm maintaining the connection to the audience and with the story. If it's wacky, crazy stuff, you're just like, oh my god, what did I just see?" End quote. Keanu has a history of doing his own stunts that stems all the way back to The Matrix, where he worked closely with their stunt coordinators, David Leitch and Chad Stahelski, who were also the directors for John Wick. Having Keanu do a majority of the stunts adds to the realism and solves the issue of having to cut to a stunt double. And Keanu performed even more stunts as the movies went on, with him performing 95% of the stunts in the third movie, sitting out for only 2 or 3. However, Keanu doesn't see the action sequences as stunts. He says, quote, "I get to do some physical acting. I get involved in some action, but they're not stunts. I flip over guys, I get flipped, I run, I jump, I play," end quote. But Keanu isn't the only actor in the John Wick franchise to get into the stunts, or physical acting as he calls it, with Halle Berry also doing her fair share of stunt work and having to get in insane shape for John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum to do so. This came at somewhat of a cost, with Barry apparently breaking 3 ribs during training to keep up with her co-star. Barry said, quote, "It was a little terrifying at first because he's so damn good and I wanted to be on the same level as him. I didn't want to disappoint him. I broke 3 ribs when I was rehearsing for John Wick. It's like a badge of honor for me. We don't know how it happened." End quote. Another major injury in the franchise came with Michael Nyqvist in the first movie, with the actor cutting his head so badly that his ear was resting on his right shoulder. This resulted in the actor getting 80 stitches, and some of the last scenes had to be redone to hide Nyqvist's scar. However, Halle Berry, who was apparently a big fan of the franchise before she joined, did not just stop at stunts, but also got involved with the dog training so that the dogs responded to her like she was their own trainer. Typically, when real animals are involved in movies, the featured animal's trainer will be just out of the frame, calling commands to the animal so that they respond accordingly. But because the dogs responded to Barry, just like Keanu doing his own stunts, the filmmakers working on Parabellum had a lot more freedom with where they could put the camera. And speaking of animals, one of the weirdest things Keanu had to do for the movie was apply bacon grease to his face in order to attract his dog to him when he wakes up in bed. The things we do for art, huh? As we mentioned, though, preparing for the movies doesn't come easy, and it takes a lot of time and effort, not to mention a massive toll on your body. Something not easy for an actor over 50, and Keanu had to make sure that he focused as much on recovery as he did on actual preparation. To prepare for the role, Keanu underwent multiple boot camps before each movie, with each one being even more strenuous and intense than the last. These boot camps included martial arts, fight choreography, gun work, and even stunt driving, with videos of Keanu practicing donuts arguably some of the best ones on the internet. As we mentioned though, the boot camps got more and more intense each time, and although Keanu was adept with jiu-jitsu after the first movie, for the sequel, Keanu's training focused more on gun training, with the actor spending hours training in every area, learning all aspects of gun training such as how to draw, reload, and shoot a weapon, which again adds to the authenticity and the realism of the movie. For the first movie, Keanu spent 2 months prior to the filming in the boot camp training. For the second, he spent 3 months, and for the third movie, he spent 4 months. So something tells me that he probably spent 5 months in training for the 5th movie. Talking about his training, Keanu said, quote, "Basically, you just take the gun home, start walking around, practice spying rooms, practice your draws, and with John Wick, you practice your reloads, transition from weapon to weapon, footwork, and then kind of come up with the John Wick style." As we mentioned, Keanu also got involved in the car fight sequences, or what the production team called car-fu, and often when you see the car driving at high speeds, it is Keanu at the wheel. Speaking about one instance in the second movie where Keanu had to drive backwards and smash into another car, he said, quote, "It was funny because I had to hit that car so hard. I ripped the steering wheel off the steering column," end quote. For the second movie, there were 5 different 69 Mustangs used, although none of them made it out alive. Reeves' stunt double, Jeremy Fry, said, quote, "We just smashed them all. It was really a little heart-wrenching to see it," end quote. For sequences like the horse sequence, Keanu was attached to strings as the rehearsed action plays out, while the motorcycle chase sequence in the third movie was shot in front of a green screen, with members of the crew kitted out in green suits to move the bikes around by hand, as Keanu and the other stunt performers play out the action scene at the same time. Arguably the hardest stunt for Keanu to perform was the action sequence in the Red Circle Club in the first movie. This is in part down to the fact that the location itself was rather tight, and there were a number of different sequences playing out at once, and it's the most complex sequences in terms of shooting in the first movie. But the main issue was the fact that Keanu was sick during filming. Because the first movie had a budget issue and only a limited time to shoot the movie, there could be no delays in shooting. So, when Keanu came down with the flu, they had to keep going, despite the actor having a fever of 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Not that it seemed to slow him down too much. According to Stahelski, Reeves refused to rest during the 2-day shoot, with the director saying, quote, "You couldn't even get him to sit down. He just did take after take," end quote. Another sequence that proved extremely tricky was the mirror scene in John Wick 2. Apparently, Chad Stahelski and stunt coordinator JJ Perry were warned that the sequence would be too difficult to pull off, but they refused to listen and set about trying to make this sequence a reality. The sequence, which was a homage to the famous mirror scene from Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon, took the production team months to coordinate just the pre-production stages of the sequence alone. Stahelski said, quote, "We started prepping all of our action sequences 3 months before anybody even unpacked a camera, and unlike a lot of other crews, my cameramen were in rehearsals, my cinematographer went to stunt rehearsals, my production designer came to stunt rehearsals," end quote. Overall, it took the team 5 days to shoot, which, put in perspective, is actually 10% of the movie's 50-day shoot. Another action sequence that proved tricky was the infamous pencil scene, something which had been teased in the first movie. At first, there were no concrete plans to include the sequence in the sequel, but Keanu was apparently adamant that it had to be included, and continually insisted on adding it in the movie, saying, quote, "In the second film, I really fought for the pencil fight," end quote, showcasing that the man really is John Wick. Of course, though, Keanu could not do all the stunts himself, and a number of stunts were handled by professionals. At one point in the third movie, Wick is shot on the roof of the Continental and slams into walls, fire escapes, and a number of other hard things before eventually landing in the alleyway. To pull off this stunt, a combination of stunts, special effects, and visual effects were used. The fall, which was filmed in 2 different takes on a scaffold set in front of a blue screen, was then stitched together in post and made to look like one continuous take. Speaking of the third movie, a funny anecdote came when the crew moved production to Morocco and the city of Essaouira. Apparently, when the crew had scouted the location, they noticed a number of feral cats, but not enough to cause much of a nuisance for filming. However, when they returned for shooting in the summer, there were at least 1,000 feral cats roaming the city streets, with the cats not only being loud and intrusive, they were also rather aggressive. So, the production hired 30 cat wranglers and built housing for them, keeping them fed at night and then setting them free in the morning. Also, fun fact, the reason that Parabellum takes John Wick to Morocco is the fact that the production team wanted to pay homage to Humphrey Bogart's Casablanca, with Rick's place apparently serving as one of the main influences for the Continental. Although the fourth movie is not out yet, at the time of working on this video anyway, there have been some behind-the-scenes stories appearing online, with actor Donnie Yen, a new addition to the franchise, keeping us all up to date on Instagram, and apparently having an absolute blast while shooting on the movie. We can only assume that a major part of why the set is such a good place to work is Keanu himself. Many actors have been drawn to the franchise because of Keanu and his insane dedication, and he is seemingly a joy to work with. That is definitely because the guy is just so damn nice. Behind the scenes footage that rocked up online shows Reeves in costume helping the production team haul equipment up a staircase, showing that he's always ready to give a helping hand. But he one-upped himself as shooting for the fourth movie wrapped up, with Reeves gifting each member of his team an engraved Rolex Submariner watch, which by the way retails for about, $10,000. He also included inscribed personal messages on the back. Yeah, something tells me I am in the wrong profession. And finally, let's end on a piece of trivia. Before the plot of the second movie had been confirmed, there were a number of other ideas the team thought about, including him rescuing a love interest and even protecting his own daughter.